you for being here. You are all invited to turn on the camera to make this more human, let's say. My name is Hugo de Sousa. In English might be pronounced Hugo de Sousa. I'm running Innovation by Kaizen. At Innovation by Kaizen, we help to shape innovation strategies, where to innovate, how to innovate, in particular in established organizations, public or private. This is our first webinar, a series of webinars where we will have informal conversations about innovation, what companies are doing, what innovators are doing, regardless of being in a large organization or a startup. And today our special guest is Pedro Oliveira, a good friend of mine since a couple of years ago. Pedro has been running startups. He successfully co-founded landing.jobs, this disruption, let's say, in the recruitment market, and now he's running talent.protocol. Talent.protocol is trying to leverage what some people call Web3. Probably he will talk about that. But I think Pedro is an innovator. He always tries to come up with something really new and valuable, and I guess that's the real definition of innovation. So welcome in Pedro. Maybe you can tell us a few words about yourself, and then we start the webinar.
Hey, morning to everyone. Hugo, thanks for the invite. Kaizen as well, I guess. Pleasure to be here and being the first. I guess that's also an innovation there. Being an innovator is being the first in many things. Yeah, just a bit of context about myself, so you can understand, where my opinions are coming from. I started the normal career in Accenture, EDP. I worked with with Professor Miguel Mira da Silva for a project in the European Union. I was a developer, analyst, and then team lead or tech lead, if you want. So, and that's after, I think it was 2010, 11, I started to get in touch with this concept of startup.
Let's go back to large organizations. So you have worked in a few. So the ideas are there. There are employees with ideas that are probably the next big thing for that company, or do we need to source out the ideas from the outside? How would you manage this if you were to imagine the head of innovation of an established company?
I think it's a bit of both. Depends a lot on the company and culture created in that company. So you'll have ideally ideas from the inside. So what we call the entrepreneurs. It's a fancy name, but it's people with ideas that they still have the energy, the will to change the organization, and they have some cool ideas. Okay, but also you can also bring innovation. There's innovation labs and very interesting processes from the outside to not only identify what these people are, but also give them like a framework, a support framework for them to strive on. Okay, now this needs to come from leadership. This needs to come from the top, the support for this. So if you have an head of innovation or director of innovation, it means that in principle, the board is supporting innovation in principle. So it can be a mix of those, and one can work to find or source the talent inside the organization to kick things off.
So you mentioned a few models here for established organizations to innovate. You mentioned venture capital, a percentage of the revenue, for instance, that we set aside to invest in companies like yours, like Talent Protocol, for instance. You mentioned entrepreneurship programs. So programs that are designed to unleash the collective genius of people working inside the organization. Probably a centralized way of submitting an idea, reviewing ideas, and then deciding what will go to the innovation lab. Why you think innovation labs are becoming popular? Do we need labs? Why a lab? I'm not sure that everybody here in the call is aware of what this is.
I'm not sure I have the best definition for a lab, but look, in my past, I've worked with different suppliers that did different things, and all of them were related to innovation, where it was like working on the brand or improving like the front end, back end, whatever, like whatever the purpose was, or just, you know, just deep innovation, just thinking out there, and perspective. I think that's how I say it. Exercises and stuff like that. So I'm a believer in that, especially doing exercises around like dark horses. You know, like what it is like, for people who don't know, it's kind of like the contrarian, right? We're so hooked, even for a startup. This is important. Like a startup has like a mission, a vision, is almost like cult, right? It's a small team, so it's easier to become a cult like. And sometimes you need to do this dark horses exercise. So I'm a huge fan of doing those, and bringing in people from the outside. Doesn't have to be like, can be a freelancer, contractor, but you know, people who help you just you know, challenge the assumptions you have, challenge what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think this is fundamental.
Yeah, so you need to bring the outside in frequently to challenge the status quo, come up with fresh ideas. So we are talking here about open innovation. So as a head of innovation, or someone with a different title responsible for innovation, it's important to put that
no, for sure,
in the agenda.
For sure, because you're always like, look, corporate world, you wake up, well, back in the day before COVID, you went to the whatever the place was, you checked in. If it's a more public entity, you really have to check in. If it's a private entity, you don't need to check in. But you do that, then, you know, coffee, start to work, meetings this, meeting that. Hey, it's a rhythm, it's a, you know, it's a day to day, right? And it's very hard to, and that makes you become biased, and then it makes it very hard to, you know, just zoom out and just, you know, let your brain fly free and have crazy ideas. It just, the system is working against innovation. But, you know, it's not a problem for the corporates, just you have a lot of people and processes and organization that kills innovation. It's just the name of the game. And the best thing to do is to, you know, first of all, recognize this, be self-aware, and then act against it. And the best thing to do, you know, if you do it internally, it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible, but it's going to be harder. So I think the best way to do is to bring in a partner, you know, depending on what the challenge is or what the challenge you think is, right? And you know, just cooperate with them. I think that's the way to go.
And your challenge is to create a system to innovate systematically. How would you do this? Is this possible? What type of models would you? How to stay relevant? How to be here in 20 to 30 years? By the way, the average lifespan of a company nowadays, we can also say product or service, is around 15 years. For instance, Facebook is struggling now after 20 years. Yeah. It's dying. 50 years ago, the average lifespan was around 60 years. So if companies need to innovate because the lifespan is shorter, what can you do? So what would you do, Pedro?
First off, I think I need to look inside and look at the people. Like, I'm an innovator, so I know who's an innovator as well. So I would look in the executive level, who's an innovator, and I could cut through the bullshit. And these people will be my right arms, my right, let's, in Portugal we love the phrase task force, my task force. This will be my task force team.
So finding the innovators within
finding the innovation task force within the existing members.
So step number one, we will have a number list in a few minutes. Okay, step number two. So finding the
look inside. I think it's also a good principle as a leader to, you know, first off, look at your own guns, count your own guns, but then know that, I mean, you were hired for a reason, right? And the reason is make us relevant in the next, 15, 20 years, as you mentioned. So I need to look at the guns, but I also know in my arsenal, we have a lot of outdated guns. Otherwise, I would not be hired. Okay, so I'm just going to look at those that I think can be progressed into really good ones, really good guns. So those will be my task force. Step 2, bring in 2 or 3 people that I know from the HR technology sector, brilliant people, okay? Bring them in for a board of advisors. And then plan for 10, 15 years. We have a lack of planning, brutal lack of planning in Portugal, not only, but as humans, we the last part of our cognitive capacity that is developed is the long-term planning.
Innovation, finding new sources of value requires planning, where we want to innovate and how we want to innovate. Not just an ad hoc kind of thing. That's what you're trying to say.
For that planning, I would bring, that's why I wanted to do the board before, because the board is going to be all in planning with the task force. And that's where the innovation starts already at this planning level. And at this planning level, one of the topics needs to be innovation. Like, how are we going to keep ourselves relevant? Innovation is how we do that. How do we do this? Do we have enough money? We have a venture capital fund. Who's leading that person? Is that person on the task force? If not, fire that person. We need another person, or either on the task force or someone to lead that branch of the business. So that's the venture capital part. Like, how do we make our people, depending on the business, more relevant or more partners of this innovation that we want to build? Like, also, like, might be relevant when we start going deeper into this, like bring in someone to build like the innovation process for which is kind of like innovation process, but at the same time you don't want to have as much, because otherwise you're blocking innovation, but to have some sort of innovation process for the internal team as well, so they feel they are part of what you're building and what you're changing. Okay, but yeah, overall the planning would define everything else to do at the company level for the next few years. Also with metrics, like
metrics. That's a very good point. So what do you measure? For instance, now at talent.protocol, it's starting. I guess it's not profitable. Probably revenue is not coming in. So what type of things do we need to measure in terms of innovation?
So before speaking about talent.protocol, we need to understand. Okay, a lot of people from the people I'm seeing with the videos up, you remember probably when Web 2 appeared. 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. What was this? Web 2 was basically infrastructure-wise for the internet. We started to get good speeds, at least in the Western world. Mobile, better computers, better infrastructure overall, whether it was personal or shared infrastructure. Cloud, you remember the cloud transition, all of that. So, and with that came new business models, like Facebook, you were saying. New business models, new things, which brought in a lot of problems, but brought in a lot of innovation as well. So I'm not going to complain about Facebook and what happened in the elections in the United States. I mean, that's, it's part of the game, it cannot be all good things, It's also changed the way we work and the way we live, in a way. So Web 2 was that. And there's a new thing coming called Web 3. Okay. And in Web 3, based on blockchain technology, is essentially changing the way we create businesses. So things like revenue, they stop being that important, and ownership becomes more important. So it's not only a mindset shift like Web 2 was, but also it's a transition to a new wave of businesses, of organizations, okay, of how to build things as well. There's this thing called DAOs, which is decentralized autonomous organizations. There's NFTs, there's social tokens. There's a lot of things that are still being built in Web3. Again, Web3 is super early days. It's kind of like what Web 2 was in 2007 or 8. Something like that. We're still in that space, or even before that. I don't know. So talent protocol, we don't have revenue. We have other metrics like total value locked on the protocol. We have metrics like some of them are the same as Web2, like users. This is the same. But the way we are building is because we have a token that bonds the community together. That's the most important thing. How much money is locked in the community? How much is that token worth? So those are the type of metrics we look into. Now, talent protocol, for the people who don't know, is essentially a Web3 professional network where anyone can invest into talent. So imagine the easiest way for you to understand what we are building is imagine LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you have a lot of connections on LinkedIn, but they are loose connections. On talent protocol, because you invest people, they are committed connections. On LinkedIn, all the data there, I mean, if I want to be a hero on LinkedIn, I will, and no one can say otherwise. Actually, I'm in touch with the people from LinkedIn because of talent protocol, and their problem is that people are doing background checks on LinkedIn when LinkedIn doesn't have verifiable data. It just, anyone can be whatever they want on LinkedIn. So that's a big difference as well, like on talent protocol, because things are on blockchain, on chain, like it's verifiable data. And it's also not about the credentials, it's about your contribution. So it's not really about your past, it's more about past, present, and future, what you're going to do next, like roadmap, this sort of thing. So we have on-chain career milestones and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, this is like the one of like the two major differences, I would say. Yeah, this, you asked me about the metrics.
Metric, yeah, this is so new. You are developing this, right? How do you know this is going to become profitable, even sustainable? What type of things do you measure?
Sustainable. Yeah, the sustainability is something we need to be concerned. Of course, obviously, we need money to pay the team driving this forward, the servers, all of that, infrastructure stuff.
This is not Star Trek yet, a world without money. So we do need money to.
We need some wealth to kick it off. So first,
exactly.
thing, for instance, this new startup, we don't have a bank account. We only have like a company in Estonia, which is is what we call in startups a helper company. Everything we do is crypto native. So we pay our people in crypto, in stablecoin, which is, it's kind of US dollars, but it's stablecoin. CUSD or USDC or USDT is the same thing. And essentially one of the first things we're going to try, and you can call this innovation, we're building in public, open source. One of the first things we're going to tie is this: everyday investment that you make in a talent essentially is through a staking mechanism. So this is not a crowdfunding, a charity, a landing, or a trading platform. It's a staking platform. So it's kind of like when you invest in someone, you're vouching for that person. So the person doesn't get the money, but they get rewarded through the tokens of the community, both the talent and the backer. And essentially, one of the first tries we're going to do is put that money that is locked on the contract. How do you say this in English? In Portuguese, render. In English, put this money in a DeFi contract, and the returns will go to the community treasury for the community to decide what to do with them. Okay, so the answer to that question also needs not to come from me as the CEO, but from the community as well. Okay, so they will be the ones deciding many of the things we'll do as a community. And if you go on my profile on Talent Protocol, I can share the public link in a bit. If you go there, you see like on my roadmap, on-chain roadmap, I want to drop the role until 2024. So this is a big innovation, not only in terms of business models or organization models, if you want, but also in terms of like how the company is being built is so different from what I've built with landing.jobs, for instance. Like when I go on a board meeting of landing.jobs, I have to put back my Web2 hat, like, and then I go back to the old metrics and revenue and profit.
Let's talk about landing.jobs, because I have, this is one of the final questions. Is landing.jobs still innovating? Is it still innovative there? What's happening?
I think like many like many companies, I'm just sharing. I'm a guy. I cannot do two things at the same time. Okay, done. Like many companies, we took advantage of COVID to innovate. So we actually changed the business model on Landing Jobs. So Landing Jobs is a tech recruitment marketplace. So the only source of money before, like the biggest source of money of profit and revenue before COVID was the recruitment. So we like a SaaS platform, like a SaaS marketplace. So software as a service marketplace type. And essentially we charge companies, they can post their jobs, hire people, they apply to talent applies to them. You know, a very simple model for companies to hire, to attract, evaluate, engage with talent. Okay. And then COVID kicks in. We already had some clients, but it was kind of like, you know, a model on the side who asked us for help with payments, right? We need to pay contractors or employees, and kind of like an employer of record thing. And because of COVID, that just was a rocket, you know, like that, just those type of requests started happening more and more. So what you need to do was to do the recruitment and payment. So we changed the business model in 2020, but it's not as innovative as it was in the beginning. Okay. Because there were less people. I mean, sky is still the limit, but back then you could only see the sky because you had nothing, right? So yeah. Obviously, everything you do day by day, you're innovating because there's nothing. So you can also classify, you know, so anything as innovation. You know.
So the BAU, the business as usual, is taking over, but still, you just said, we tried something new due to COVID. So here's an opportunity. We will need to change a few things again.
Yeah, it's so still possible to innovate. It's still innovation.
What we say is at Innovation by Kaizen is that you need to take care of today. That's the BAU, and you need to take care of tomorrow and beyond. You need to become ambidextrous, not just about tomorrow and create shiny new things, but also running the business as usual. There's a question here that I'm going to help to answer. What do you think is the best strategy to make this internal innovation process attractive to employees? So in my opinion, I will ask Pedro as well, you need to have an innovation program. You need to have your own innovation model. So that needs to be clear. And that program / model, or more than one model, will clarify this. So there are, for instance, incentives. You can incentivize people to come up with ideas. You can incentivize people to run experiments in a safe place. For instance, Pedro mentioned innovation labs. So having this type of program, innovation program, is essential for companies to keep innovating. Adobe, for instance, they started with an innovation kit, like a box with everything inside, how to run an ideation workshop. I think there was a $2,000 voucher there as well. And they were allowed to use, I don't remember, Friday afternoon to come up with, to work on anything they would want. So there are ways to shape your culture for innovation to flourish. But Pedro, if you want to help, feel free.
My framework is very similar to yours. So like you need an alignment framework around financial, emotional, and social incentives. So financial, we mentioned a few. It can be those. It can be like if you want to like do a spin-off. Like if you're like an entrepreneurial type, we have a massive idea, you make an amazing pitch, and you have to go to do a spin-off, which is also another format of innovation. Could be through the venture capital branch or whatever. I mean, you should have like a big share of that spin-off, right? As the founder. So the financial incentives depend on the type of innovation there, like how big it is, but it should be aligned. The social, you know, sometimes it's as simple as, you know, in the company newsletters and the all hands and, you know, the retweets and all that, just giving stage to those people, like just, you know, calling them out, you know, praising them. That's the social part. And the emotional part, I mean, this is more like relevant for the people who are actually, you know, part of this. We come up with ideas, we're part of this, so that they feel engaged. So the process needs to be an engaging one. Otherwise, you'll lose that emotional component right away.
Okay, I think that's a very good point, Pedro. So going back to your checklist, how established organizations can continue relevance, okay, or how can established organizations innovate continuously. So your point number one was I'm an innovator. So the leader needs to be an innovator, or at least he needs to sponsor innovation. Then you said find other innovators, like find others like me. And we know that in large organizations, there's always someone trying to break the status quo, coming up with new things. So find your tribe, your team. It's probably scattered across the organization. Then you said start an innovation board, like an advisory in terms of innovation. So people that will probably meet once per month or even more when the program is starting to decide where to innovate and how. That goes back to your point number 4 about having a plan. Where do you want to be in 10 years? How are you going to be there? So the assumption here is your core business is going to change, or else someone else will force you to change. So you better plan before that happens, okay, to stay ahead of the curve. So where and how, what you need to do to keep relevant. Then we talked about metrics. So there are ways to measure if we are on the right track or not before finding revenue. One of the things we notice sometimes is that people want innovation to happen in the year when we start the program. And I like to say that innovation is a journey, and a journey takes time. Then we can also say there's continuous improvement, that many times we call it innovation, small changes that will have an impact in the fiscal year, but big changes take time. That's why Pedro said, yeah, have an innovation strategy, have a strategy. Innovation is part of the strategy. I think this probably wraps up many of the topics that we told here. And I have one last question for you, Pedro. What's your advice for middle management and leadership in companies, established companies?
It's two different
middle management and then
right?
Yeah, and then leaders at the board level. Let's start with middle managers.
Middle
what do you think?
Tough one. I was trying to go for the other one first. Middle managers. Middle managers is tough because a lot of companies don't want them, you know. So it's usually you're stuck between the leadership and the individual contributors, right? You're in the middle, like you've grown your way to be in the middle, and it's not always good to be in the middle. All right, so actually the middle managers should be the ones pushing for innovation the more.
Yeah.
Right. So because you need to make your role relevant, otherwise ICs we say, you know, what is this guy doing? You know, what does he do every day? Meetings. And leadership at some point may say, what is this guy doing every day? Meetings, you know, like they do, but the same thing, but they're middle management. So actually middle management, you might think you're in a comfortable role, but in my opinion, well, it depends, again, it depends a lot from organization to organization, but I mean, it's probably the worst position you can be in, and that can also be used as a drive for innovation. Okay. All right, for the leadership team, for leaders, you're kind of at the top if we're looking at the hierarchical structure. I mean, it's expected of you to push for innovation. Okay, so if you're not, you're a bad leader. So it's a very simple metric. How much from your budget is going to this? How much time during planning are you thinking about innovating? And I think they need to think a lot more about it. The problem is sometimes, you know, a lot of times they don't.
So have an innovation budget, make time and space for innovation. That's point number 6 and point number 7 of the checklist. Does anyone want to ask us a question, or Pedro? Feel free to unmute. We are running short on time, but we still have space for one question. Okay, we don't have questions. Great. So Pedro and all, thank you very much for being here. Stay tuned. We will announce another webinar soon to talk about innovation in established organizations. Thank you all. Pedro, once again, thank you very much for your time and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Let's keep innovating. Bye.